Thanks for joining us today. What you're about to hear is a presentation of Hickory Grove Presbyterian Church in Mount Juliet, Tennessee. To know more about the church, visit their website, hickorygrovepca.org.
All right, so you all have wandered up here into Nehemiah Sunday School. What are you in for? I mean, we'll find out what the Holy Spirit, has laid out. But I think before we go dive in, we've got some slides here today, and you have Al and I here today, which I think, if nothing else, that really should have been a warning label. And you all,
everybody makes mistakes.
I don't know if this is coming to the circus side tent, the sideshow of the carnival, or if you all really love studying it. But I think before we kind of dive into some of the meat of this, somebody 3 weeks ago was in the Ephesians study asked me, why are we doing Nehemiah? And
who asked that? Somebody in here?
Who did? I think it wasn't. Maybe someone who's just running a little behind right now.
Okay.
If I'm remembering correctly. And as my wife could tell you, 3 weeks ago for me to remember a conversation is a long time. But I think that's a good question. And I think even in the classroom, I think when I have to teach something, I try to tell my students why we're doing it. And sometimes the answer is somebody made me with the students. It's not, however, this time. And so I think at least, and I'll speak just for me, why Nehemiah? Like the Bible's filled with books. It's filled with lots of things we're studying. Why this book that, maybe I've heard one sermon series on it in my life, at least live in person. I'm not sure I've ever sat through a full Sunday school covering the entire book before. Why do this thing? Years and years ago. And some of it, I think, as far as Hickory Grove, I think we're looking in a similar time frame, I think, to where Jeremy had done a successful study in I'm gonna stutter. Doing through Esther. And so going back to some of the exile, look at things that were going on, but from another perspective and in another place, had some benefit. For me personally, I think having just done a couple New Testament studies, and since joining this church, I'd never taught the Old. And so I think that. But I think more personally for me, I think Holy Spirit's been leading me to a lot of points to think a lot about this book. It's meant a lot to me personally for years. Some about who Nehemiah is, what he's doing in this book, and I think a lot of its practical applications, I think for me personally in my life, about how God leads people to do things way beyond themselves, sometimes through very difficult circumstances, and also provides through that, I think, are timeless and applicable to large numbers of people, no matter your walk in life. And I think this is a book that has ministered to me in long ways. And I've often learned, I think, when I do Sunday school things, if God's ministering me through something, other people need to hear that. And so, somebody asked me, what do you think, dude? So, I don't know, this was one place, I think, it just, for those reasons, it kind of ended up here. And so it wasn't, we didn't flip a coin or draw lots, or, there wasn't arm wrestling. I don't know, Al, did you have any comments on this?
I do.
Yeah.
So I was raised in a denomination that said, well, the Old Testament has got some good information, but it's not, if it's not the New Testament, by golly, we don't need to get too excited about it. But we had a lot of Old Testament stories, and I loved the stories in the Old Testament. And but Paul wrote, this Old Testament, essentially paraphrase, was written for our instruction, which meant the Holy Spirit organized the events for our instruction. if we had to write about it as well. And so that's the reason why, these richnesses, how does this apply to me? So as we go through Nehemiah, how will it apply to you? How will it apply to us as a church, us as families? There's really good lessons with that. Nehemiah was, Jason will tell us who Nehemiah was, of course, but he was, it's an interesting character. All these guys have really good stories and really good connections. And as we go through there, we'll figure out what's the gospel connection as well. What is the gospel connection?
There's definitely one, yeah.
Yeah, always that. So what did he look like?
I think he was dusty most of the time. I think he probably had a donkey coming behind them, and he was always looking for a group of people. Physically, what he looked like, probably not much. We're 2 puns in. There you go. Not even 10 minutes in. We got 2 puns. All right. All right. Well, we do have a bit of a slideshow today. I was going to joke about there being a test at the end, but
It could be.
We're all Presbyterians. Y'all would make an A anyway. So,
I was asked how many persons have read Nehemiah completely. Julie's honest.
I can just say, though, I'm glad we're doing books that are a little more obscure. I feel like sometimes we preach on just the big ones.
Okay.
I like learning about the small
Gotcha.
I often feel the same. I also think that's the benefit of having, long semesters, that we do here in Sunday school, because we're hoping to go, through the whole book. So, all right, we'll walk through this again. The expectations. There's a few discussion questions on them. It's not necessary. Probably today, at least depending on how you use your time, we really just kind of have an introduction to this book. There's some history behind this that if you were a reader of Nehemiah in this time, that you're kind of assumed to have known, that isn't necessarily immediately apparent. There's a few names to figure out. So our goal kind of here today is to preview some of the gospel context of this book, to kind of put it in context of the rest of the Bible. We may get to like a few specific verses in it, but just kind of a preview of it. Like our first real dive into the meat of the text is probably next week. And so hope no one's too disappointed by that. But I think understanding where this fits in with Ezra, Esther, just the rest of the Old Testament, and with what's to come, I think is important. So who is Nehemiah? And we're starting here, and by this with Nehemiah, we mean the person. So review, since a lot of you read this before. He's the cupbearer to King Artaxerxes I. While there is some scholarly debate on this, and so we have to kind of say maybe a bit with some of the history of this. This is probably the son of the King Xerxes who is in Esther. He is particularly a layperson. I mean, he gives his father in the opening of the book, but he is otherwise not recorded anywhere else in the Bible. He's not from a priestly line. He's not a prophet. In fact, I know when Al and I were talking over this one point, he really sticks out. Like Nehemiah is on a certain level, he's going to be blessed by those. He's on a certain level, just a guy.
A really sharp guy.
A sharp guy. Next slide's going to talk a bit about this, but, Isaiah had a vision of God in heaven. David, while the seventh son was anointed to be king, Samuel is raised in the temple and has God speaking to him from a young point. Nehemiah is an exile, and he's on a certain level of guy. He's going to perform no direct supernatural miracles.
His closest analogy would be Daniel. Not exactly Daniel, but in terms of being a picture of the king, but not a prophet like Daniel.
Yes, and Daniel has a lot of supernatural things associated with him. But time period wise, Nehemiah probably we'll get to this. It's probably 2 generations of exiles younger than Daniel, a generation younger than Esther, and so he's coming really around the end of this. And so the events of this book probably start around 444 BC. And so this is coming near the end of the exile period. In discussion of this, and Val, again, added something to this, why do you think it's relevant that he's not a prophet?
Because it's ordinary people.
Yeah. God chooses ordinary people. What else, if anything?
Well, he has a very important part of the government, you know, as at least with access to the king. So there was obviously something about him that put people put their trust in him.
We have a little more on that next slide. Yes. Hey, Leslie. I think it's one thing for me, Spirit Prophet, is that not that all prophets know exactly what's going to happen. A lot of them just have the word Lord live, but he doesn't know. Like he has no visions of the future for what's going to happen. While he is seeing a lot of time praying, he is, throughout this book, living every moment for day to day, hoping God will provide. And that's really it. And he has no moments of, water coming out of a rock, Red Sea parting. He needs God and also people with him, forces above him that are not Jewish or believers of God. He needs forces in general in the world to move for things to work out. He is in that level, I think, someone for whom, if you want to operate in the realm of doing something for God or caring about, like, who a lot of people can relate for, And for that, I think, for someone whose name is on the front end of an Old Testament book, like I think he stands out. Any more just sort of comments on this? Again, people just coming in. This is just on first slide. You've missed nothing. Yeah.
So there's two levels of being a prophet in my mind as I listen to you. One is the functional side, which is what I think you're talking about. But there's also the sense of which there are three offices in Israel: prophet, priest, and king. He's not a part of that. He's outside of that whole apparatus that's designed by God to run God's people. But he is also a redeemer. Like Jesus was a redeemer, he was not part of that, of the three offices. So he's going to redeem his people in a way, and he comes from outside.
Yeah. All right. Next slide. Let me turn this over to Alex. So, we talked about the time period. He's probably a generation or two younger than Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Probably at least a generation younger than Esther. Her age is a little uncertain, so maybe two. He's at least, to a certain extent, as we can tell about his background, he has at least a high knowledge of Scripture and God's promises. Not everyone in exile did. Travis, he's at least trusted enough to be the king's cupbearer as a foreigner exile. And the text notes this, he was trusted enough to serve the king in the private presence of the queen. So he was trusted enough to be in the king's presence when perhaps other people wouldn't have been. It tells us some about his character, how he was looked at. And we'll see kind of next week, what eventually gets the king to start Nehemiah on this project is like when Nehemiah's slight facial expression seems to have changed. The king goes so far to notice it, and it starts Nehemiah on this journey he goes on, where he's eventually going to end up a governor several chapters later, when it starts with him looking sad one day. That's something here. All right. Al?
A little background here.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think is always important to do is understand kind of the world and the context of whatever we're talking about. It may be important to me, maybe not everybody else, like Bill may not care. But I think it's I think it's helpful to do that. What's that, Bill?
I can't.
Okay, no care, it's just making sure. So I want to understand about the world that Nehemiah is operating in, that he inherited, came through. So here we go, on that slide there. Isn't that a pretty slide? Okay. Thank you. So any good slides, I'll take credit for. So Nehemiah's in the exiled world, but actually, exile actually had ceased. But so we had the United Kingdom originally, which blew apart. You see down there with the northern kingdom became Israel. They got scattered starting around 734 BC. The Assyrians were the king of the dog pile there. Had two major attacks and didn't know what happened to the northern kingdom. Poof, where did the people go?
10 lost tribes now.
A lost tribe. They went all over. Some stayed, and you know what those people who stayed, they were called?
Samaritans.
Samaritans. They kind of got mixed up with other peoples as well, and kind of secretists as well. So that's what happened in the northern kingdom. The southern kingdom had several attacks. So right after Israel was attacked, a couple decades, let's go after Israel. Hezekiah said, prayed. The Syrians didn't make it. And then you had a couple of attacks by the Babylonians, which were conclusive, like 605 BC, 597, 586 was like the last time they were around there. And so they took all the good people. That's kind of what they phrased it. Took all the smart people, good people, working people. They went to Babylon. The Babylonians took those away. They left kind of poor people, so there were still some people kind of hanging around there, but it wasn't really as populated as it was before. So the big question is, how is the fate of the northern kingdom relevant, maybe, to the discussion of the book of Nehemiah? Any relevance there?
Yeah, when Jesus was on earth, he talked to the Samaritan woman at the well.
He did.
And eventually, what did Jesus tell her? That there's coming a time when God is going to be worshipped in spirit and in truth.
Yep.
Which means, the gospel, God's covenant's going to go out to all peoples of the earth. So, the northern kingdom was conquered and scattered, but eventually their descendants and whoever else from around the world would be, because of Christ, could be grafted back into the covenant.
I think it's very true, very important. But I was thinking about more connection with Nehemiah himself. Is there anything maybe that will be relevant to the time of Nehemiah and what he might be thinking about?
I guess I think of, there are people, even though the two kingdoms are split, who were still in the land, not exiled, who would have had those stories of the kingship and the temple and the commandments and just the history of the people perhaps shared in that region. There would have been a sense of ownership of that region.
The ownership of that's true. That's good. Anybody else?
Was Nehemiah part of his heritage, his ancestry? Was he part of the north?
Southern.
He was part of the south.
Very southern, yeah.
He was a Jew.
Southern, Southerners are, anyway.
Yeah.
As a southerner,
I've heard that.
Got that as well. I think one of the things that I was thinking about with this, and discussed with Jason, is Nehemiah would have known and would have seen, what happened to the northern kingdom. And you talk about his love for the people of the city, and that kind of motivated him. He really didn't want to have happen to them what happened to the northern kingdom. I mean, if the people didn't stay together, think about when the Israelites went to Egypt, right? They stayed together. They didn't intermingle as much with the Egyptians. A little bit of going on, but they didn't intermingle, so they want to stay a people. That's the only way they preserved their heritage for the time they were in Egypt coming out. And I think Nehemiah, even though he's in Susa, hanging out with the others, he works with these guys, but he still loves his people and his culture to the extent, we'll read about in the book what happens with that. So I really think that he wanted to make sure, as much as he could personally, he didn't want to happen what happened to the northern kingdom. He didn't want to see that in a city that's undefended with no walls at that time. That's technically an open city, and bad things could happen.
Yeah, it wasn't it.
William?
On this outstanding graphic and timeline,
Thank you.
where would you place Isaiah?
Isaiah was around the
800?
early 700s. He was around the time of Hezekiah, and prophesied with him too. So Isaiah, prophesying ahead of time about what's going to happen, was around the time of that destruction. Jonah was a little bit before that. We're talking about the story of Jonah. He was before the destruction because he talked about the time talks with him. So
No, he was from the northern kingdom.
He was.
Yeah.
He was. Okay. So anyway, no one caught my joke though.
I'm sure it was.
United Kingdom to the untied kingdom. Bill, I did it for you.
What do the A and B stand for?
Assyrians or Babylonians? Ooh. Oh, sneaky, didn't put a legend on there too. We'll go to the next slide if that's okay. So this is from the exile to Jesus. The exiles we talked about for Judah started right before 600 and kind of continued on for a little bit. And they stayed in the land for how many years? What was the exile?
70.
70 years, that's right, says the lady who studied Nehemiah recently. And so then those returned to the land. What it didn't put on here is that many chose to stay in Babylon. Many chose to stay there for a long time. I mean, for centuries as well. If you think about we talk about the Talmud being written. Talmud wasn't exactly written at this time, but they started writing, and a lot of it was written in Babylon, not in Jerusalem. So certainly a very, very important sphere for Judaism was in Babylon as well.
Al, what do the arrows mean? Does that mean Babylon?
It means it means it continued in that direction. So if you see in the land here, this is past 0 BC. So they were still in Judea. Back in the land is there as well. And Babylon started before this time. So we got Babylon did the conquest, did the exile, and not long after that, who came along? The Medes and Persians, right? Remember the story in Daniel about boom, they take over, and he's working for Darius and a few other folks as well. So the Persians were starting earlier, and so in fact Cyrus, right, was the king who said, well, these people are going to go back to their place, and I'll give them back some of their treasures, and you guys can do your stuff. So Cyrus was actually pretty cool. He was a pretty cool dude with that as well. So you had Xerxes coming along there, and we have the time of Nehemiah, because Jason has referenced 440 BC and others. So Nehemiah was clearly in this time, but not long after that, 330 BC, Greece. You've heard of Alexander? Anybody? Yeah, the Great. That's what he called himself. But he had like a drinking problem. Didn't work out too well for him. And so Greece continued along in this area, and then come along about 146, I think the Romans finally conquered Greece, and essentially the world was like that as well. So this is the time of Nehemiah. Greece is on the ascendancy, and if you remember, do you remember a dream that Nebuchadnezzar had?
Statue.
What did he dream? He dreamed, and Daniel had extra dreams about that as well. I think he talked about a little ram that might have been Greece coming on there too. So this is the world that Nehemiah's living in, but also Artaxerxes is living in this world as well. So there's a lot going on. So, Jill, why were the four kingdoms important?
That's what it was represented by the statue with the
It was.
weakening.
It was. And it talks about the kingdom that's ultimately going to be fulfilled down there, which disciples might have been thinking about. They're like, okay, we have Babylon, we have early Greece, Rome, so that means this kingdom's going to be set up. Jesus, are you coming here to set up your kingdom? And Jesus had a different view than theirs, exactly about how that's set up. But anyway, so the four kings are important for that. So I don't know that Nehemiah had that in mind, but he knew that he was going to have to help preserve his people.
Well, actually, at the end of the exile there, before you start in the land, is the end of the sacrificial system of the Jewish people. And all of a sudden, they no longer have the history of sacrifice as everything was sacrificed. So they had to find a new way of living.
So which are you talking about in Babylon?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No, before that, when you show the exile like there,
No.
at the end of the exile,
No, they came back.
it's when the temple was destroyed. And in essence, the people were
rebuilding.
all of a sudden didn't have the sacrificial system to depend upon.
Didn't have the stuff to work on, yeah.
And so you've got all of this turmoil going on, but what do we do now because we don't have the sacrificial system that we've
Yeah.
used for centuries?
So you had Ezra go in,
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so
Nehemiah
there's
went
a
in.
sort of a unknown period of it.
it's a turning.
We're getting used to still being Jews, but we don't have the sacrificial system.
Well,
And
yeah,
so
they
you can
probably,
understand
yeah,
the power sources going on, because there is not the one solid thing that they've
Yeah.
had for years.
yeah. Yeah, my question is who's the high priest too?
Yeah.
It's up one as well. Thank you, thank you. Any other comments on the slide besides the beauty of the, oh yeah.
Well, the one other thing is, it kind of points out when I studied about that, the rebuilding of the wall, where Nehemiah's time starts the 70 weeks of Daniel's prophecy for when the Messiah would come.
Oh, looking ahead.
Oh, sorry. Wrong slide.
Different book. Okay, next slide here. So what's going on in the world of Artaxerxes at this time? Think about who Nehemiah worked for.
Didn't he work for Cyrus?
No, Nehemiah worked for Artaxerxes. Cyrus already had been kind of gone there. The empire was a bit extended. This is the biggest empire in the world now, right? So they're pushing the envelope all around, mainly towards the west, a little bit Africa, but mainly towards the west. They really kind of own the area as much as possible. But Artaxerxes' father, Xerxes I, was murdered in 465 by the commander of the royal bodyguard. Now, who's more trusted than the commander of the royal bodyguard? That's what happened to Anwar Sadat, something like that. I mean, it's not that. That's the thing you can get to that guy. And it's rumored his brother might have done it. There's a lot of intrigue going on there as well. And so that's like just 20 years before Nehemiah comes into with the two. Then they had an Egyptian revolt, so they were owning that area around Egypt and kind of that classic area. There were several Jews who had moved there instead of going to Babylon. They're like, well, we ain't doing that. We're headed to Egypt. You hear the prophecies about Egypt and negativity with that as well. So there was a revolt of Egypt, and they beaten the Persian army and took them several years, 6 years or so, to finally bring it under control. And then you had also that intrigue between Egypt and Greece. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so and Greece wasn't just Greece at this time, by the way. We saw Greece kind of going there, but there's Athens and Sparta and people going against each other. The first time they really got unified was around, I think, Alexander, who pulled them together.
Well, no, it was before that. Greece was unified when Persia invaded Greece from 490, 480. There was the Battle of Marathon. Then 10 years after that, you had
We also had fightings between the Spartans and the Athenians.
Oh, there was.
Greece wasn't perfectly one. It wasn't just Greece.
But when Persia invaded, they were very unified.
Well, they didn't want the Persians coming in. No question about it. That's a real excellent part because, again, any man is my friend, and so we got to protect against the Persians. So they held off the Persians at some point in Greece, but there's still this stuff going on with Greece, and there's this conflict.
There was a civil war afterwards, the Peloponnesian War.
Yeah, Peloponnesian came up, and so there's also peace that was negotiated, not fully, in just a few years before this as well. So, question about this. So, based on what's going on in the world, what do you think is important to Artaxerxes?
Staying alive.
Staying alive. He did like the Bee Gees, so he did like. So a big fan of that as well.
How is he can trust?
Yeah, he's got to have loyalty. He's also thinking about how do I kind of protect my empire with that as well.
Well, didn't Artaxerxes actually go and fight the Jews? I mean, the Greeks?
I don't know if he went personally. He may have gone. I don't know that fact.
There's a time frame in there, of a 4-year time frame, which seems nobody knows. But isn't that the time that they were going into Greece, but they were defeated?
Artaxerxes was king the first time at the Battle of Marathon, where the Greeks defeated the Persians. And then Xerxes wanted to pick up where his father left off
Yeah.
10 years after that in 480.
But he wasn't successful.
No,
They
it was a
came
disaster.
back.
No, they couldn't, yeah.
It was an utter Persian disaster.
Yeah, they had this, and that's why they had to negotiate peace treaties with them as well. So yeah, I think loyalty was important, but the empire, protecting the empire, was huge to them as well. So what would be a benefit of something strengthened in Jerusalem? It'd be another kind of stronghold that he could help possibly create. Wouldn't fool 100% with that as well. But Israel, the Jews had a love-hate relationship with Egypt, and that was an issue. Jews didn't want anybody controlling them, right? They didn't want to have the Greeks coming in and run them over as well. So it's possibly another outpost, not for certain. But see, the big thing out of this is there's intrigue going on in the court. There's intrigue with the kingdom, and he really needs loyalty, and people who are strong can support that.
I think, Al, as we look ahead, this is something also we're thinking of, because this also feeds into one of Nehemiah's problems. Artaxerxes would also be really worried about betrayal. Mm-hmm. And this is something, because the Persian Empire has conquered so many, they have a lot of governors and people who are made up of lots of other people of lots of different ethnicities. Yeah. And that entire empire has a history of promotion via assassination, lying, and intrigue. And
like his own father.
Yes, and that is frankly a problem for Nehemiah. There is a lot of just the more successful he gets for God, the more lies he has to deal with as this goes. And I'm sure that has no 2026 connections whatsoever.
Could I have one thing?
Yeah.
We live in an age of satellites and instantaneous communication.
Yeah.
Everybody back then walked. And it might have taken 4 years to walk down to the border with Egypt to fight your war and then get back again, is what I was thinking. But how to communicate you're in charge of something and giving orders to people, it takes months to just get a message out.
It does, and it takes months, but I don't think it doesn't take 4 years to get from Jerusalem to Egypt, even back then. And if you're the king and you want to send a message on a horse, you send a messenger on the fast horse to your next message station, where that horse rests. You get the next fast horse. You send the next one. Yeah, and it's it still takes months, but that's you wait the months because that's fast then. You've appealed to the king, and you've appealed to that's kind of what happens in this book on some of them. The conflicts simmer, but it's
But I think the distance in time too, because Nehemiah can't get instant responses. Hey, they're saying I shouldn't build. They don't like me, and and then you're competing with that, but you're also competing with Artaxerxes' time frame. What is he working on as well? It's like he might ignore that email for a few days.
And I think. Yeah, it's like, what does he have going on at the same time? Because there'll be lies sent. Nehemiah has to respond.
Yeah. Jerusalem is not the top of Artaxerxes' agenda.
But I think it's not like everything we do now, and often these high issues is settled immediately with lots of facts. I finished an insurance appeal a couple months ago that took me 10 months of back and forth and sending the same documents over and over again. I think Nehemiah had some of these allegations that he was rebelling probably settled in a shorter time frame than it took me to get $250 or something refunded from Cigna. Yeah. What? Yeah.
You should have used the sword.
I should have used the sword and the Pony Express, And I was just, emailing and mailing something to Chattanooga. It was, hey.
Did you read any imprecatory Psalms?
I should have. I should have. So, all right. I think next slide. All right. So what is Nehemiah? And I underlined it because a grammar lesson. We're talking about the book at this point. A lot of you have said you've read this, so perhaps to keep this short then, for just a quick review. It's about Nehemiah's return. He does have some Jewish exiles with him, though it's initially not about exiles coming back. There have been 2 previous return trips already. And so initially, so if we go way back to like in the initial exile, it's not like every single Jew, it's like everybody in Jerusalem gets mostly exiled. There are some people left in the countryside. There have been 2 previous return trips of exiles at this point back to Jerusalem. One in the time of Cyrus the Great. You get around that time probably the ministry of Haggai. They get the second temple rebuilt. You have another one that comes back in Ezra. However, while that begins to fulfill the prophecy of it going on, we have some lingering problems. While we do have the temple being rebuilt, what we'll see later in Nehemiah is the city itself is underpopulated. This won't come out later into it. A lot of Jews don't want to live in Jerusalem. There are some security issues with this. We'll see later in the book there's actually some economic incentives for not living in Jerusalem. And so God has promised to restore them to their promised land. And you said some of them wanted to flee to Egypt, some of them go off to Greece, but some of the Jews are like, they're coming back to the country, they're like, nope, we've done this. It's like, no. So let's think about a minute. If you've read this before, what Nehemiah gets in the calling is he comes back. This starts off as a wall building project. Jerusalem has no walls. Why do we feel it's significant? The city has no walls.
Nobody wanted to live there.
Why?
Not secure.
Yeah.
Why would that make it not secure? Why not just have a few more guards?
Who wants to be a guard?
Well, it's big.
Well, they were surrounded by enemies.
Were they? It's all Persian Empire.
Oh, Nehemiah had some
Nehemiah faced a lot
adversaries.
of bodies.
He did have some adversaries.
Neighbors, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of those ethnicities, good. They still don't like the Jews. Persian Empire or not, they still don't like them.
Yeah.
And remember, let's think back one generation to Esther. Even all inside the same empire, we have Haman trying to exterminate them all.
And they still remember what Israel had done to them when
Yes.
they came into the promised land. So
Yes.
they didn't want that again.
And also this idea, I want to put up, a city without a wall is not a city. It can't defend itself. You can sneak in, you can sneak out, you have no clear border, you can't enforce trade. It's really just a village. It's not really a place you can be protected. It's not a place you can safely raise a family. You would much rather be out on your own farm in the countryside, a lot less people moving around, your own land, generationally tied to it, than in an urban center, no clear protection. It's a problem, you know.
And you also had, one of the styles of warfare was to lay a siege.
Yep.
So you need to be enclosed and with enough food and water to outlast the food and water of the army that's against you.
Yeah. And a city is not a farm.
Right.
A city requires support from the land around it, at least on a certain level. And as so getting to this, it was a traditional center of strife. In the history of these people's grandparents and great-grandparents, Jerusalem had been sieged several times, particularly in the time of Hezekiah and on. Now it doesn't even have the walls. And so in Nehemiah 11, they have to actually take lots. This is after they've built the walls to get people to come back in and live the city. They have to take, and they said there was extra honor placed on the people who volunteered. And there's a suggestion that daily life was actually more lucrative for the people who were still farming out in the countryside. From all these promises that God was going to restore them after 75 years, it happens and they're like, no. However, they do it. Say this about this. They do it. Why would it have been a problem if the people didn't want to live in Jerusalem?
There was a prophecy that they'd come back. And God's word cannot be broken.
Well, they got the temple rebuilt,
Yeah.
but they haven't really gone back to the concept of the religion. The Jewish concept. We built a temple, we've done our responsibility. It's not safe there, we're going to speak.
Oh, so what did Cyrus send back to the temple?
Lots of gold and
Lots of gold treasures, things like that as well. What do marauding bandits like to get?
lots of gold.
Lots of gold. If I'm going to attack someplace, man, that'd be like the place to go. Hey, nobody's there. Got a temple, man. Sign me up.
For the people, it wasn't there. I mean, it would be the temple's golden treasures, but that was...
That's anything.
Yeah, they might have had generational memory of. They gave up all the golden treasures in before to lift one of the sieges from Babylon.
Well, the older people, too, could remember the original Jerusalem. And that thing they built, had no, that doesn't remember the... I remember what the thing used to look like. Now it looks like this. I don't want to have anything to do with it.
No resemblance.
And comparison and mockery, they said, will be one of the tools the enemies use. It's the first thing they do. They start making fun of whatever they're going to do. Sanballat will be his name. Yeah. Anything else? Why would it have been a problem if people didn't want to live in Jerusalem?
Well, it's hard to get people to fight for you to defend it.
Yeah.
We just saw the young Washington this week, and there was a conversation between an English colonel and George Washington, and the colonel said, "Why do you fight so hard? Why did you fight for risk your life for this?" And he said, "Because I was born here. It's my land." And the colonel said, "Well, I was born in England. This is not my land." So one was willing to lay down his life for his land. If you're not a resident, you're not going to be willing to lay down your life for what's yours.
Yeah, they might otherwise defend their farms. They'd break up into a series of villages. They really wouldn't be one people anymore. And, God had promised something else. Now, New Testament will teach us it's really the children of Abraham's promise who believed in these things. But, God has been faithful to them continually, despite the Israelites' constant backsliding struggles. We want to go back to Egypt, back in the old days. Now it's kind of like, okay, we got the promised land back, but you know what? Never mind. We'll just be, we'll be Persian citizens. Their constant choice of some lesser form of citizenship and slavery over what God is giving them. It's just another version of it. And, it's not... there's something 2026 for it there. It's like we take the gifts of God and we go, thank you for the feast. I'm happy just sitting over here eating the Smarties, or or whatever. This is fine. Okay. Well, I thought you had another section.
No,
I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. Only 2 pretty graphs. Sorry, my mistake. We can't saturate you all in the first week.
chose not to.
I don't know. I know we're done a little early, but that's okay. If it's like high school students, you shouldn't over PowerPoint people.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
Is another way to answer that question.
Yeah.
on a level of you need a certain number of people to make a city work. Because I just realized, they don't have the agricultural, the food has to come in from outside. Livestock, all that stuff. You need a base of people, which is so foreign to my way of thinking, because I have, population overload.
We are increasingly urbanizing American society. Now American has had opposite impulses, some technology-based right now, but they have to take lots. Like when they hit chapter 11, they move eventually, not counting volunteers, but they move 1 out of every 10 people who's living outside moves into Jerusalem. It's a big, can you imagine? 3 city house. It's like volunteer, and everybody's like, nah, I'm going to stay living in Carthage and Sparta and Columbia, and I'll stay living on the outside. No thanks. I won't go live in an empty Nashville. It's like there's no traffic. Nah. Fast internet? Nah, thanks. Dixon's good enough for me. Watertown, great place. Got my farm, got my cows.
We're blessed to live in a land where we don't need walled cities.
Yeah.
That's, maybe firearms help too, but, we'll see as well. I was going to add one thing about, besides Nehemiah, so there's always this question within the Old Testament of which prophets were active and what were they doing at the time of this particular book. And it kind of feels like Malachi might be the main one active around the time of Nehemiah. And Malachi was the last prophet, right, that received the word of the Lord. So you get this 400 years, 40 whatever, between Malachi and Jesus. So Nehemiah, I don't think he mentions Malachi, but is kind of operating around that same time, the last time that you get the word of the Lord. Interesting that it comes around the time of coming back to Jerusalem. That's intriguing. And also there's this interaction in Malachi of some of the prophecies he talks about, or some of the things that Nehemiah was dealing with. So whether it's tithing and foreign wives and spouses, things like that. So anyway, you might want to consider checking out Malachi. We may, interact with that as we kind of go along with relevant passages for that as you get later in the book. But that's one of the prophets that would be come in to read and look at that. So not exactly when he wrote the book, Malachi didn't say, "Hey, I wrote it right here when Nehemiah was doing this," but it's pretty close to that as well.
It's also, for those of you, I know a few of you in here like Bible trivia. Originally, when the Jews compiled the book of Nehemiah and put them together in Jesus' time, if they took it out to read as a scroll, Ezra and Nehemiah were one large scroll altogether. Ezra flowed into Nehemiah. It was later when composing the Latin Bible, it got separated into 2 different books. I mean, it reads either way. It's still, the text of God. But if you like some Bible trivia, First and Second Samuel are the same facts. So is First and Second Chronicles. But it was all originally, it was like them. It was one book, or if you like, scroll that would have been read. All right. I think it's okay to be done a couple minutes early. I don't know.
Well, this is a good example for other classes, actually.
Frankly, yes.
I won't say which one specifically, but
I always say if we start getting done at 9:55, we'll get worship started actually at 10:15. But you never know.
I mean, worship starts on time. That'd be great.
Yeah.
We're good. Right. So let me close in prayer. Holy Father, we thank you for your word. We thank you for the people who preserved your word through all those millennia, generations with great difficulties. We thank you for the The lesson example that we have in the person of Nehemiah, who exhibits a hope and a need for you, and always relies on you. And we ask that we consider that example as we go forward in the rest of this day and this week. And we ask you to bless our worship to come. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen.
This has been a presentation from Hickory Grove Presbyterian Church in Mount Juliet, Tennessee. Please feel free to share this content with others. We only ask that you not sell or alter it in any way. If you'd like to know more about the church, visit us on the web at hickorygrovepca.org. hickorygrovepca.org. Thank you so much for listening. May the Lord be your glory, and may His glory be your joy.